So, could you please tell us a bit more about your artistic and academic research? How would you describe your work?
A lot of photographers are also writers, and a lot of writers about photography are also photographers. And it's interesting, I think it's more the case in photography than in painting or sculpture. And I guess that's partly because photography over the last 20, 30, 40 years has been very discursive. There's been a lot of language around photography, and it's been a very conceptual field. So I started out as a photographer. I ended up doing a PhD in art history on the uses of photography by conceptual artists. And the reason I did that PhD was because I believed very strongly, and still believe, that the conceptual art of the 60s is a really pivotal moment for understanding contemporary art, and that would set me up for all sorts of things in terms of teaching and working as a writer and a critic. And so that's been a kind of trajectory that my work has followed.
Good. And how would you describe Drape? And what do you think is the most striking aspect to it?
Well, at its simplest, it's a series of images of women obscured by curtains. One of the things that intrigues me about it is that it's not the drapery that usually enfolds the classical nude. It's drapes, generally polyester upholstery fabrics, which are not what you expect the nude to be wrapped in. So there's a familiarity and an unfamiliarity about them that sets the viewer's imagination working.
Okay. And a question about your book, Why Art Photography. I was wondering, isn't photography always art photography?
No, my passport picture is not art photography. Police crime scene photograph is not art photography unless that picture is then recontextualized within an art context. So the original essay that became the introduction for this book was an essay I was commissioned to write by Source magazine in response to an essay they had had in their previous issue about other uses of photography, non-art uses of photography, written by a writer who felt that those non-art uses of photography were both more important and also more interesting than art photography. So I was doing the kind of rebuttal, and that's what the book goes on to do.
Is there such thing as a commitment of photography to reality? Because I read this sentence in your book. And do you think there is such thing as the commitment of photography to reality?
I think because of the fact that the chemically based traditional photograph contains actual physical traces of light that existed in the world, it's always going to be a medium with a special relationship to reality. That's not to say that that's the only thing that photography can be doing, or that it's necessarily the most interesting or important thing that photography can be doing, but it's always going to be there. And I think perhaps what's one of the most interesting features of photography over the last couple of decades, and Eva's work included, is the fact that photography has been thinking about all sorts of different ways it can be engaging with different aspects of the real that may not be to do with the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of our physical environment, but with how things really are underneath, and the real understood in a broader and deeper sense in terms of psychology and philosophy and all sorts of things.